Hey, the summer break resumes. What's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite TV shows, and today I'm gonna do a TV review of Barry Season 2 as promised. So, Barry is a TV show about a hitman who works for this guy named Fuchs, and also at the same time the Chechens, but stuff's happened and the mob boss of the Chechens kinda died, and now the person succeeding him is Noho Hank, who is actually a total coward and a loser, and he's hilarious. And at the same time, Barry actually didn't want to be a hitman. He didn't want to kill anybody because he's a good person. So he decided to join an acting class. And he's not a great actor, not at all. And in the same acting class, he met this girl named Sally, and Sally had been trying really, really hard to join the movie business, to be famous. And also, the teacher of the acting class is Mr. Gene M. Kusno, who fell in love with a police officer who's responsible for investigating one of the murders that happened because of Barry. And so when that police officer, Detective Moss, found out that Barry was the murderer, Barry had to do what he had to do. And it was sad. And that's the ending of season 1. And now we have season 2, and I'm gonna be honest here, it's even better than season 1. Actually, way better. It's way more entertaining, way more tight, and they also upgraded all the storylines on season 2 to make them even more interesting, engaging, and captivating. And again, only 8 episodes. Every episode is around 30 minutes, so it's 4 hours. It's really quick to go through. So we have episode 1. The show must go on. Probably. So at the end of season 1, Barry refused to work for Fuchs anymore because he didn't want to be a killer anymore. He wanted a new life. He wanted to be a great person. He wanted to be good. But because of that, Fuchs had to hire another hitman because he's in the hitman business, and that hitman sucked. So he got busted by the cops, and the cops took him. And at first, Fuchs lied his way out of the problem, and he tried to refuse giving a DNA sample voluntarily. And at the same time, he's drinking from a can of Coke provided by the police. So there you go. He just accidentally gave his own DNA sample. And also on Barry's side of things, because Detective Janice Moss was killed, Mr. Kusno was really sad and depressed about it. And originally, Mr. Kusno wanted to cancel the entire acting class, but Barry actually managed to persuade him to not to do so, because Barry wanted to continue acting. And Mr. Kusno challenged Barry by daring him to tell the class about his first kill. And Barry actually did it. And everybody thought Barry was really sad and messed up about killing a person. But in actuality, the first time Barry killed someone is the best day of his life. So it's kind of funny, but also kind of sad in a way. And because of this, the entire class started to try to out-grieve one another by being in a competition to tell your own sad story. And so this whole, sad story confronting the past theme goes on throughout the entire season, including Sally, who's trying to confront her past as a victim of an abusive boyfriend. So long story short, episode 1 is a pretty good season starter, and then we have episode 2, The Power of No, where the members of the acting class continue to try to tell their own sad stories, and all of them suck. They're all kind of cringy. They're kind of ridiculous, actually. But yeah, there's also that. And also, at the same time, Gene Kusno tried to reconnect with his son, and it's another really nice moment where the story humanizes its characters. Not only do we see the very, showy, kind of almost a little bit egotistic side of Kusno, we also see his more personal side, and I think that's really cool. Also, on the NoHo Hank side of things, originally Hank teamed up with the Chechen's rival, Cristobal, who is a Bolivian gang mob boss, and then all of a sudden, their biggest rival, Esther, from Myanmar, aka Burma, she joined, and now it's almost like Esther replaced NoHo Hank in Cristobal and NoHo Hank's relationship, and NoHo Hank, or I should just call him Hank. Hank is kind of jealous, so Hank began to plot against Esther. There's a scene that I really, really liked, is the first scene of Esther, when Esther and Cristobal showed up, and Hank was like, wait, what is she doing here? And then Esther suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed her hand, and then all three of them started laughing, and Hank was like, we're laughing at the hand stabbing now. And also at the end of episode 2, Hank tried to get Barry to assassinate Esther, and Barry was like, hey Hank, am I an evil person? Am I a terrible person? And Hank was like, oh, absolutely. And Barry was like, oh shit. And then Barry tried to kill Esther, and he just couldn't do it because he's not a bad guy. And so the whole hit messed up, and now Esther knew about this random assassin, hitman person, and the whole thing gets really, really complicated. And then at the end, Fuchs showed up in front of Barry, and Barry was like, get the fuck out of here. And there's sort of a twist ending here, a minor twist, so I'm giving you a minor spoiler alert, but basically, apparently the cops found out that Fuchs is related to the murder of Detective Moss, and Detective Moss's colleague, Detective Loach, figured it out and tried to work with Fuchs to get Barry's confession of killing Detective Moss so that they can bust Barry and put him in jail. And with all these storylines of Esther being a thing, Barry almost being, put in jail, and Fuchs not liking Barry, and everything else, and the acting class and all that, all these storylines come together to put the viewers and Barry specifically in a very stressful situation, and I really enjoy it. Anyway, on episode 3, it's titled Past equals Present times Future over Yesterday. Not a great episode title, but the episode itself is not that bad either. Again, the hit went wrong, and Hank was like, guys, we need to kill Barry. So they tried to assassinate Barry when Barry was in his and Sally's apartment trying to figure out the whole, confronting the past play. It had become a play, and Hank and his hitman tried to kill Barry, and they totally failed. Barry showed up behind them, and they were like, oh. It was really awkward, and it was really funny. And Barry was like, no, you guys have men, you have your own men, they're cool. And then Hank was like, no, they suck balls. And the other hitman who got shot was like, if we suck balls, then you're the king of Suck Balls Mountain. And then before that, Barry actually pointed a gun at Hank, almost shooting Hank. And Hank was like, do it, just do it, my life doesn't matter anyway. And when Barry put down the gun, Hank was like, oh, that was so close. And at the end, there's another sort of a small twist ending where Sally's abusive ex-boyfriend shows up out of nowhere. And Barry was like, oh, it's him. And then that's the ending of the episode, which is an amazing cliffhanger. There are a lot of cliffhangers here, actually. almost every single episode here ends off with a cliffhanger. And I really love that. And even though episode 3 isn't all that eventful, it's still kind of entertaining. And then we have episode 4, What? And it's a fantastic episode. First of all, Sam secretly sneaked into the theater, the acting class theater, and saw that Sally is doing a play about him hitting her. Yeah. And so, but Sally didn't know that Sam knew. So Sam decided to call Sally and tell her to go to his hotel room. And Barry was just super angry about it, and Barry followed Sally into the same hotel and almost killed Sam. But at the end, he just sneaked away, and it was a really suspenseful moment. Also, on the same episode, because also in that play about confronting your past, Barry really didn't want to talk about his first kill because it didn't really happen like that. So he decided to talk about the time he saved Albert. But later on, Barry went to Mr. Kusno's house and told him what really happened. And it's another scene where it defies expectations and something unexpected happens, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but it shows that when Barry is angry, he can become a really bad person. But in general, Barry is a really good guy. And it sort of almost foreshadows the ending of the season, which I'm not going to talk about without giving a spoiler alert. And then we have the ending. Mr. Kusno told Barry that he's a great person, and Barry actually felt kind of enlightened by that. So Barry went to Fuchs' hotel room and told him that, he can change, he could leave the past behind and forget about killing Moss. And then at that point, Fuchs was like, nope, don't, no. And then suddenly something happened. And I guess I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. But it's really hard to talk about this TV show without giving away any spoilers. But yeah, anyway, Barry admitted that he killed Detective Moss in front of Fuchs when Fuchs was wired. And then in the same hotel room, Detective Loach came out of nowhere, and it was just one really devastating moment. It's like, oh my gosh, it's the end for Barry. Barry's busted, people finally knew, and no one's gonna look at Barry the same way again. And then at the very end, suddenly Detective Loach, he turned off the recorder, the audio recorder, and he was like, do you know how it feels to lose someone you love? And Barry was like, okay, I'm really, really sorry about killing Detective Moss. And Loach was like, no, I'm talking about my ex-wife. So yeah, basically Detective Loach wanted Barry to kill his ex-wife's new boyfriend, whose name is Ronnie and whose daughter is Lily. And that leads to episode 5, Ronnie/Lily, and damn, this is one of the most entertaining episodes on TV I've ever watched. In the span of 30 minutes in the entire episode, it's all one big fight scene between Barry and Ronnie and Lily. And it's almost like a bottle episode, but it's not like the whole thing happened in one house or in one set. The plot is very simple, and it's like one hit that went wrong, and that's the entire episode. And I really, really like that concept for the episode. It really reminds me of that Fly episode in Breaking Bad, except this one is even more entertaining, even more fun and suspenseful. And the fight scenes here, they are sloppy, and they're kind of entertaining, but also sometimes kind of gruesome in a really awkward way. And I just really love how the writers balance the comedy with the drama really well on this episode. So yeah, basically Barry went to Ronnie's house, and at first he didn't want to kill Ronnie. He told Ronnie to leave secretly. And then Ronnie was like, nope, boom. Ronnie was actually a Taekwondo master, and so is his daughter. So the fight scene between Barry and him and his daughter is actually pretty crazy, pretty wild. The first act of the episode completely takes place at Ronnie and Lily's house, and they just broke everything. Every photo, everything on the tables, everything in the cupboards, all broken, all smashed. And at the end, Barry actually kicked Ronnie in the throat, and Ronnie couldn't breathe and kind of collapsed. And then his daughter showed up, and his daughter is like an animal. She's like, and she's always crouching, like some sort of animal. And when she attacks, it's just insane. Like, she's just insane. And I know it's unrealistic, but I actually enjoy the fact that it's unrealistic to have a daughter this scary. And then later, when Barry and Fuchs were escaping the house, leaving the house, Barry told Fuchs about the little girl, and Fuchs was like, "Oh my gosh, you need to kill her." And then Lily showed up in the car and bit Fuchs' cheek. And it was another really surprising moment where it defies expectations. And then at the end, Lily just hops out of the car and just screams, "Ah!" and then just runs away again. And that's all we see of Lily. I actually kind of want to see more of Lily, because it feels like an open-ended, loose end for her storyline. And because when Barry and Ronnie were fighting, Barry was stabbed, so he had to go to a supermarket to find stitches and whatever there is to help him. And then in that supermarket, Ronnie showed up for some weird reason. Like, Ronnie's just too strong. And they had another huge wild fight that went super sloppy because both of them are like nearly dying at that point. Okay, I'm gonna give another spoiler alert because the ending of this episode is just downright insane. So Detective Loach showed up out of nowhere and shot Ronnie while Ronnie and Barry were fighting in the supermarket. And then Ronnie was dead, right? Wrong. Ronnie was still alive, and Ronnie just karate kicked Loach and killed him. And then all the cops came and killed Ronnie afterwards, and Barry just escaped the supermarket. And that's basically the ending, except at the very, very end, when Barry was gonna go back to the car with Fuchs, he suddenly realized that Fuchs is the culprit of it all. So he decided to not work with Fuchs anymore again. Anyway, we have episode 6, which is also a really solid episode in my opinion. First of all, Barry decided to train Hank's men, the Chechens, and at first they were all really crappy, they're all really shitty, but at the end they were actually really well trained by Barry. And this one guy who's originally this shorty, this P-body, I've never used this word before, this P-body in the Chechens, he was actually kind of talented, and Barry always pushed him, so he became a real tough guy. And he thanked Barry for giving him a purpose, and it's actually a touching scene. And later on in the season, there's more to it. And so basically the Chechens thanked Barry, and Barry left. And then after that, Sally decided to tell the truth about his abusive ex-boyfriend. And at first it was very cringy and awkward for Sally, and Sally cried. And later on, when Barry and Sally are trying to act as Sam and Sally, Barry actually recalled the worst thing that he did, and he gave another stunning performance out of nowhere, even though he's a bad actor. And it's another really good accidental good acting scene. And because Barry told Fuchs to, fuck off or something, Fuchs was pissed, so Fuchs decided to tell Mr. Cousineau the truth about how Barry killed Detective Moss. And it was another really scary storyline because while Fuchs is not a really tough guy, he's certainly a smart guy. And Fuchs can really somehow disguise as a private investigator and tell Mr. Cousineau all these stuffs about Barry. So Barry's at high stakes here. But also, who's at high stakes? It's Hank. In the scene where the Chechens thanked Barry, there's this other accordion player guy who kept on interrupting Hank and Barry's conversation, and Hank was like, "Could you please shut the fuck up?" And that accordion guy was like, so that guy, again, I don't want to spoil anything, spoiler alert, but that guy basically ratted Hank out and told Cristobal and Esther that Hank and the Chechens are preparing to kill the Burmese gang. And so at the end of episode 6, Esther and Cristobal basically had all the Chechens at gunpoint and locked them up. And yeah, really great cliffhanger. And then we have the second last episode, the audition, and man, it's such a great episode. First of all, Sally finally was able to get an audition because one of her agents saw the play and she was moved. She thought Sally would be a great spokesperson for abusive relationships and all that. And so the agents directed Sally to a very famous director, a very famous TV director who proposed a TV show about abuse victims, the women, killing their husbands and boyfriends. And Sally was like, wow, that's very, very insulting and disrespectful. So Sally turned it down. And that was a really important moment because Sally tried so hard to be famous and to be in a lead role in a TV show, but at the end, because the TV show is against her own ethics, she turned it down. And all the agents were like, oh, come on. So it was a really important moment, certainly. And then also at the same time, for some reason, one of Sally's agents saw Barry and was like, you know what, I'm going to give you an audition. And that just shows how Hollywood kind of works, because it's not really about hard work. It's about luck. That's how Hollywood works. Also, another thing about Hollywood is that for most of the time, your work may go against your own ethics, and you need to be really careful about it. Again, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, because everything else about this episode is very spoiler heavy. First off, because at the end of last episode, Esther and Cristobal's men had the Chechens at gunpoint, and they locked up all the Chechens together in a school bus, and they were about to burn them all alive. And then Barry's best men, the same guy who thanked Barry for giving him a purpose, he managed to help all the Chechens escape and fight back, and it was amazing. It was actually a really proud moment because Barry really trained him well, surprisingly. Even though in the beginning, Barry was just, phoning in, but at the end, they actually became well-trained men. And then also, at the same time, Fuchs decided to tell Mr. Cousineau about who killed Detective Moss. And so Fuchs and Mr. Cousineau went to the cabin where she was killed. And when Barry learned about it, he completely ruined his audition and ran straight ahead towards the cabin to stop Fuchs. And this scene was really suspenseful and intense, and it actually kind of reminds me of that Tuhadjale episode on Breaking Bad, where Walt rushed to the boondocks because he thought his money is being taken. And then we have episode 8, which is even better than episode 7. And in my opinion, I think I enjoy the finale even more than Ronny/Lily because it is more dramatic and it leaves a stronger impression in you. But yeah, the whole episode is fantastic. Every single scene left me on the edge of my seat. It's really entertaining, really intense, has a crazy ending, and it defies expectations. And again, spoiler alert, I'm sorry guys. But yeah, basically, first off, we have Sally turning down the dumb TV show and trying to work on her own piece about, confronting her abusive ex-boyfriend. And one of her agents actually apologized for the dumb TV show thing, and actually supported Sally on her theater piece. So her agent decided to book her and the entire acting class a big theater, so that they can actually perform that piece about confronting your own past. I don't know why my nose is itching. And when that scene happened, both Sally and Barry were super nervous. And Sally was also in a very terrible mood because she had to turn down the TV show, and somehow Barry got the audition, and Sally was jealous. And at the same time, Fuchs wanted to get to Barry and tell Mr. Cousineau the truth, so Barry was in a lot of stress. So both Barry and Sally were in a really bad mood when they had to do the play. And man, that scene, it's just really intense for me because I've been on a theater stage before, and when the camera goes from the backstage to the front stage, behind the curtains, it's like a really real moment for me, And when Sally and Barry were about to act out the scene, Barry was just panicking, and Sally just had a nervous breakdown. She just said, "Fuck you," and destroyed everything, and it was like, oh my gosh. She just ruined the whole play. Like, the play already sucked, but this scene just totally ruined it. And all her agents were like, oh. But then at the very end, suddenly, Sally's agents were like, "That was a great performance." And then Sally was like, I can see through this BS. Of course it's a terrible performance. And then all of a sudden, all these audience members, they started to surround Sally, and all of them were like, "Wow, that's really inspiring and motivating and powerful. I really enjoy the performance. It's amazing." And it's another moment where the show completely defies your expectations, and it tells a lot about Hollywood, because sometimes you do something accidentally and it becomes a big thing. That's how Hollywood works. Also, after telling Mr. Cousineau about Barry, Fuchs decided to get Hank's men and turn them against Barry. And Barry was just super duper furious, so Barry rushed to the monastery where, it's called the monastery, right? So Barry rushed to the monastery where all the Chechens stayed, and Barry just killed everyone. The first person he killed was Esther, the gang boss of the Burmese mafia gang. And Barry just shot everyone, killed everyone he sees, until he finds Fuchs. But at the end, Fuchs escaped and Barry lost him. And when Fuchs escaped, Barry's best apprentice, was about to kill Barry. But then when that person saw Barry, he was like, "Oh, it's Barry." And then Barry just pop, and he's dead. And it's another really heartbreaking moment for me, because that guy thanked Barry for giving him a purpose. And when he said that, Barry actually kind of smiled, because, wow, I just did that. It's powerful. But when Barry's angry, his anger just blinds him, and he just kills everyone he sees, no matter who they are. And then after Barry calmed down and he looked back at what he did, he was just shocked. He realized that that's not who he is. And then at the end, he just walks into the dark. And it's just one really, really sad moment. One really jaw-dropping moment. But actually, that's not the end. The ending was when Mr. Krusno suddenly remembered that Fuchs told him Barry killed Moss. So it's another scene that is amazing, another amazing cliffhanger, and it kind of reminds me of Hank figuring out Walt's real identity in Breaking Bad again. So yeah, great ending. Overall, I think Barry Season 2 is a huge improvement from Season 1 at all fronts. I think the writing is even more interesting. Again, the performances are amazing. Bill Hader is great as both a comedic actor and a dramatic actor. Also, this show really wore its influences on its sleeves, especially Breaking Bad. But this show really manages to get its own style and has its own special storylines, and that's why this TV show feels so entertaining, interesting, and refreshing. And it's something that the HBO channel really needs after the flop that is Game of Thrones. So, yeah, my only issue with the TV show is that some of the scene transitions are a little jarring, but other than that, I really have no complaints whatsoever. I am saying Barry Season 2 is mind-blowing. Yeah, it is. It is mind-blowing. The worst episode is, I think episode 1 is kind of slow, and my favorite episode is actually the finale, and I'm giving Barry Season 2 a 9 out of 10. So, have you watched Barry Season 2? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.